Don't worry, I'll take you to safety.
The flashing sirens used to feel like a threat, and the badge was her protection. But here we were, on a freezing, empty street, facing a totaled police car. I had a terrible choice to make. Dive back into the shadows I knew, or risk everything to save the very world I'd been running from. That moment shocked an entire police force, but first, it completely changed me. The night was thick and cold, smelling like wet pavement mixed with a faint, sharp scent of smoke from somewhere far away. I knew that smell. It was the constant bitter reminder of my life on the street. My loyal dog, Boomer, shuffled along quietly beside me. Every so often, he'd look up at me with those big dark eyes, asking a question I couldn't answer. We hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. I'd split the last piece of bread equally with him. That was our sacred rule, a small act of sharing that meant everything. My stomach let out a deep, empty groan, a sound I was used to ignoring, but tonight it felt painful and loud. I kept my head down, searching every dark alley and trash can for anything to fill the hole. The air felt even colder than usual, a damp chill that cut right through my thin coat and sank into my bones. Rain had been threatening all day, and now a fine mist started to fall. Clinging to my hair, as we walked under a streetlight that flickered weakly, Boomer suddenly stopped. His ears shot up, his body tensed, and a low growl rumbled deep in his chest. It wasn't an angry sound, but a worried warning. I followed his gaze and saw something awful. A car was tilted strangely on the side of the road, one door hanging open like a broken wing. The headlights were barely on, just two faint yellow eyes in the dark. The windshield was a spiderweb of cracks, and a thin wisp of smoke curled from under the hood, smelling sharply of hot metal and burned plastic. The silence was heavy and wrong. It felt like the street itself was holding its breath. My heart started to pound in my ribs. Not much scares a man who's lived rough for years, but this scene felt completely wrong. Too quiet, too still, a clear sign of recent violence. I could see oil shining on the asphalt and a trail of something darker leading from the car. A massive wave of fear, a pure animal instinct to bolt, washed over me. For guys like me, police officers rarely mean safety. They mean questions, suspicion, and trouble. But then, a deeper, more human feeling took over. A simple need to help someone in desperate trouble. Boomer was focused on the car, stiff with worry. I couldn't just leave her. I had to do something. Boomer whined, pawing the wet ground, his eyes fixed on the woman inside. He was right. We couldn't leave her to die alone. All right, I whispered, trying to calm my shaky hands. We can't just walk away. I leaned into the car. The sick smell of burnt rubber and hot metal stung my nose. Ma'am, can you hear me? Her eyes fluttered open for just a second, and her lips barely moved. The word was a faint, desperate whisper. Help! That was it. That was all I needed to know what to do. I had no phone, no money, no way to call an ambulance. All I had was my hands, my loyal dog, and faint memories of first aid pamphlets I'd seen at a shelter once. I looked at the bad wound on her shoulder. She was bleeding heavily and wouldn't last long like this. I ripped off my tattered coat, not even feeling the sudden cold. It was thin, but it was all I had. I quickly tore the coat into long, thick strips. Boomer barked, worried, circling the car. I know, buddy, I know, I muttered, my voice shaking a little as I tied a makeshift bandage around her wound. I pulled it as tight as I dared, knowing pressure was key. She winced but didn't fight me. Stay with me, I urged, my voice surprisingly steady. Don't give up. I'm going to get you out. The smoke from the engine got thicker, a sharp, bitter cloud that made my eyes burn. The car was a ticking time bomb. I had to get her out. Okay, Boomer, back up, I said, a new determination in my voice. With a grunt, I hooked my arms under hers and slowly pulled her from the seat. She was dead weight, and my muscles screamed. The strain in my back felt like fire. Her boots scraped on the pavement, a dragging sound that seemed to echo the desperate effort. I thought of my old life, the hard work I used to do, and used that memory as fuel. Boomer barked encouragement, running around us, his tail giving a tiny wag. Step by step, I dragged her away until we finally collapsed onto the soft grass. I was gasping for air, my whole body shaking. Her breathing was shallow, but maybe a little steadier. The blood was still seeping into my torn coat. "You're safe," I whispered, the words feeling huge and foreign. I checked her pulse, just like in the pamphlets. It was weak, but still there. "All right," I told myself. One thing at a time. I pressed the coat harder against the wound. Boomer sat close, and surprisingly, he gently licked the officer's hand as if reminding her she wasn't alone. I just sat there in the silence. A light rain started to fall, soaking us. The street was totally empty. Just me, my dog, and this woman. And for some reason, the weight of the whole world felt like it was on my shoulders. Her lips parted again, and I barely heard her whisper, "Radio." I looked back at the wrecked car. The radio was crackling faintly, a small mic dangling from the dash. I had to get help. I ran back, grabbed the mic, and pressed the button. My hand was shaking. I stopped. Who was I? I had no authority, no badge. Just a man with nothing. That thought hurt, a painful flash of my old, lost identity. But then my voice grew stronger. "There's an officer down near 12th and Main. She needs help now." Silence, just static. Then a sharp, urgent voice came back, full of authority. "Identify yourself." I swallowed hard, fear and cold in my mouth. "Just someone who found her. Send help, please." I dropped the mic and hurried back, kneeling beside her. Boomer gave one tail wag, as if hope had just walked into the dark night. Minutes felt like hours. The light rain turned into a steady downpour. I hunched over the officer, shielding her with my body, the cold soaking through my thin clothes. I whispered to her, trying to keep her spirit anchored. "Don't give up. You have people waiting. You have a reason to keep breathing." Boomer leaned against me, warm and solid. Then, in the distance, I heard the sweetest sound, the faint wail of sirens, cutting through the rain. Help was coming. Relief hit me, but fear followed instantly. When the cops arrived, what would they see? A homeless man, covered in blood, leaning over one of their own. The sirens grew louder. Red and blue lights pulsed frantically, splashing color over the street. Cars screeched to a stop. Doors flew open and officers rushed out, guns drawn, their faces hard and grim. "Hands up!" one yelled, the bright flashlight beam blinding me. I froze, raising my hands. The bloody coat strip still clenched in my fist. "Wait!" I shouted, desperation raw in my voice. "She's alive! She needs help!" Boomer barked, protective, standing his ground. The tension was suffocating. I thought this was the end. But then, another officer quickly knelt beside the injured woman. "She's still breathing!" he yelled. The guns lowered slightly. Paramedics sprinted in, lifting her carefully onto a stretcher. As they started wheeling her toward the ambulance, one cop grabbed my arm roughly. "What did you do?" he barked, suspicious. I didn't resist. My voice was calm. "I found her. I pulled her out." I stopped the bleeding. The officer sneered, clearly disbelieving me, but another voice cut in. "He's telling the truth. Look." The officer pointed to the blood-soaked strips tied around her wound. The coat was pressed firmly. He saved her. Silence fell, a heavy, quiet understanding, broken only by the medic's hurried words and the sirens. Boomer growled softly, but I stroked his head. "It's all right, boy. We did it." The ambulance doors slammed shut, and it sped away into the night. The street was left with just the rain, steam from the wreck, and tired officers looking at me. One of them stepped forward, his eyes softer, showing respect and confusion. "What's your name?" he asked. I hesitated. Giving my name meant records, judgment, and doors closing. Tonight, though, I felt like I had nothing to hide. "Jake Thompson," I finally said. I looked down at Boomer, and this is Boomer. The dog wagged his tail. The officer nodded slowly. "All right, Jake, we'll need your statement." For the first time in forever, I wasn't running. The truth was enough. They guided me to a police car, but they didn't use handcuffs. Boomer trotted beside me. Inside the car, I watched the red and blue lights disappear. My body ached, and my stomach was empty. But something else filled me, purpose. I had saved a life, not for a reward, but because it was right. Boomer rested his head on my knee, calm and trusting. I scratched his ears. "Good job, partner." For the first time in years, I let myself feel hope, a fragile new feeling settling in my chest. At the station, they gave me a towel and a warm coffee. I sat in a small room under buzzing fluorescent lights. Boomer curled up at my feet. Other officers looked at me, some suspicious, some curious, searching for a motive they could understand. Finally, a sergeant came over, his face serious. "Tell me what happened," he said. I told him everything. The smoke, the wound, the bandages, the radio call. My voice was steady, my details exact. When I finished, the silence stretched out. Then the sergeant said quietly, "You may have saved her life tonight." The words felt like a great weight had been lifted. I sipped the coffee, enjoying the heat. Boomer lifted his head, his tail tapping softly. For years I had been invisible. Tonight they saw me, not as a nuisance, but as someone who mattered. I stroked Boomer's head. "We did all right, boy." Meanwhile, across the city, doctors fought hard to save the injured officer. Her mind drifted in and out of the fog. But through the pain, she kept hearing my voice. "Stay with me. Don't give up." Even when she was fading, those words somehow kept her anchored. She wasn't ready to let go. Back at the station, I sat quietly, not knowing the woman I had saved would soon change my life, as much as I had changed hers. Fate had already started weaving our stories together. The rain finally stopped, leaving the city clean. I watched the last drop slide down the window, feeling Boomer shift against my leg. "Maybe tomorrow will be different," I whispered to him. It was a small, fragile hope, the first I'd allowed myself in years. Morning came, and I was still there, sitting on a hard bench. The sergeant returned with news that felt like the sun rising. "She made it through," he said simply. "She's in critical condition, but she's alive." I let out a long breath. "Hear that, partner? She's still fighting." For years, my life was measured by hunger. Today, it was measured by the fact that a stranger was breathing because of me. A detective took my statement again, going slower this time. No grand stories, just the truth. When he finished, someone slid a donut across the table. I broke it carefully, giving Boomer the larger half. My old rule, the dog eats first. The police station felt less harsh now, with sugar in my mouth and purpose in my bones. Across town, Lieutenant Sarah Adams slowly woke up, surrounded by the beeping of machines. She remembered the rain, the voice in her ear, and the soft touch of a dog's head. "The man?" she rasped. The nurse smiled. "He came with you. He called it in. He's okay." The words were like a strong railing, helping her hold on. She knew a stranger, and his dog hadn't looked away, and she borrowed their stubbornness. By afternoon, Sarah wanted the full story. The detective told her a homeless man named Jake Thompson dragged her from a smoking car, tore his coat, called for help on a broken radio, and shielded her with his own body. "Where is he?" she asked. "Here, in the building. We're figuring out what to do next." Sarah's voice was thin but firm. "What to do next is say thank you. Bring him here, if he's willing." Downstairs, I was watching the rain trails on the window. When the invitation came, I shot up too fast. I stood at her doorway, suddenly aware of how rough I looked in such a small, clean room. Sarah lifted a bandaged hand. "You stayed," she whispered. I nodded. It just seemed like the right thing to do. Boomer walked over with quiet dignity and rested his chin on the side of her bed. A small, pained smile touched Sarah's lips. "Then I owe you both." I shook my head. "No cameras, no speeches, please." She met my eyes. "No press," she promised, "just the truth." In that quiet agreement, trust began to grow. The news tried to get the story, but the police department only gave a short statement. A bystander provided life-saving aid. No names. I kept to the edges of the city, sleeping at a shelter and working odd jobs, moving carts, fixing squeaky hinges. I looked for broken things to fix, not for praise. Boomer quickly found the good spots, a water bowl by the laundry room, a quiet spot for a nap. People started saying thank you with their eyes. On the third day, Sarah could sit up. "Tell me about you," she said. I looked up, thinking about how to sum up my life. A job went away, then the lease, then the phone. I just started walking, I told her. Boomer found me under a bridge and decided I was his. Boomer thumped his tail. "What do you want now?" Sarah asked. I looked at my dog. "A door that opens easily, work that feels real," his bowl full before mine. She nodded, not with pity, but understanding. Later, she made phone calls that began to move mountains. A new ID, a dog-friendly shelter, a short work contract, no cameras. Just forms, foil blankets, signatures, and a social worker in a sea-green scarf who said, "Welcome, we have a chair here for you." The shelter gave Boomer a tag. The facilities manager gave me a tool cart and a map of all the squeaks in the building. That first night, Boomer snored loudly as the rain hit the window, not my coat. I lay awake, my hand on his warm fur. "We earned this," I whispered. The work felt real. I fixed a laundry machine, rehung a door, and got a stubborn dryer working again. I didn't brag, I just made problems disappear. My quiet reputation for reliable work spread fast. Boomer made his own rounds, boosting morale just by being a good boy. On her first real walk, Sarah met us at a park. We walked slowly, each step a small victory. "Why didn't you leave?" she asked me. I thought about it. "Because staying seemed like the answer." She nodded. "Then staying is the skill we'll teach." An internal review tried to make my good deed look suspicious. I sat under bright lights while they asked sharp questions. Sarah, using her rank and the fact that she was still recovering, watched. When it was her turn, her voice was strong. "His times match dispatch records. My wound matches the pressure from his coat. He stayed. We are not going to punish a man for being a good person." The room relaxed. Afterward, she rubbed her shoulder. "I hate when kindness has to be checked." I shrugged. It passed. Boomer sneezed, not caring about paperwork, and got 3 ear rubs on the way out. The ceremony was small and quiet on purpose. Coffee in paper cups and a few sincere claps. The chief, his suit slightly wrinkled, read from a paper about extraordinary aid, then looked up with softer eyes. "Thank you." Boomer got an unofficial dog tag with a tiny badge on it. He wore it with the calm pride of a creature who already knows his value. I looked like I was about to bolt, but I didn't. When they clapped, I just stared at Boomer's new tag. It was easier to let them applaud the dog. With my first paycheck, I fed Boomer like he was a king. Then I went to a hardware store that makes keys. I stamped a new tag for him. "Rusty," I wrote. "If found, we belong to each other." The clerk stapled the receipt with special care. That night, soup cooked on a donated hot plate. Sarah came over with forms that said, "No one survives alone," and a plan to prove it. We signed papers, drank soup, and sat in comfortable silence. Boomer lay between us, a friendly guard dog. Saturdays started belonging to the church basement. The coffee was strong, and hope felt practical. Sarah put up flyers. Free first aid, 911 basics, no ID needed. 10 people came the first week, then 22. I taught them chest compressions on a dummy, my hands steady. "It's not about being a hero," I said. "It's about staying. Press, count, breathe, stay." Boomer walked around, collecting courage from the hands of the people who petted him. A grandmother learned to wrap a wound gently. A teenager asked, "What if I'm scared they won't come?" Sarah answered, "We come," and you could tell she meant it. Later, the small group turned into a real program. One evening, I went back to the corner where I'd found her. I touched the tree that had been there through the rain. "We made it here," I whispered, like I was talking to an old friend. I told it about the key tag, the warm room. Boomer sat beside me. The city hummed around us. The streetlight that had once scared me now just did its job. I scratched Boomer's neck and headed back toward a door that opened with a key instead of a struggle. The distance between being outside and being home had finally gotten much, much smaller. The nonprofit found me a single room with a west-facing window and a heater that mostly worked. I lined the windowsill with my tools and small hopes. The social worker left a photo of Boomer on the counter. Sarah came by with papers about benefits and a patience that outlasted any red tape. We named the plant in the corner, and it didn't die. I stood in the room and realized I hadn't thought about escaping. The facilities job offered me months of work, not just weeks. It became a real job with health benefits, and someone fought to get Boomer his first checkup. I read the letter twice, then signed it carefully. On my way home, I stopped at a bakery, bought 2 loaves of cheap day-old bread, and asked the baker if he could sometimes save me a little extra for friends. He said, "Sometimes is the start of always," and tied the bag with a string. Boomer carried it part of the way home, proud of the weight. Having a little more than you need felt heavier than hunger because it meant you could share. I gave a short talk to the new police recruits. They'd only seen the world from a car. I didn't preach. Some nights ask a question, I told them. You can be the answer by staying long enough to matter. Sometimes that means pressure and patience. Sometimes it's just a phone call. Don't ever think the quiet work doesn't matter. Boomer, as guest of honor, checked their boots and their hearts with the same care. Afterward, a recruit admitted he was afraid he'd freeze up. Count, I told him. Doing one thing creates the next thing. Press, count, breathe, stay. Life still had hard moments. I slipped with a wrench. A bus driver closed his doors on me. But there were victories. A quiet elevator worked again. A clock kept the right time. A neighbor knocked not to complain, but to ask me to sign for a package. The city wasn't a fairy tale, but it was a place where I could live. On payday. I taped my pay stub inside a drawer, not as a prize, but as proof that I had re-entered the world. Sarah returned to work with a small ceremony just for the people who mattered. The chief pinned a ribbon on her uniform. She looked through the small crowd until she found me leaning against a wall. We just nodded to each other, sharing the whole story. The rain, the staying, the paperwork, the Saturdays. Later, she asked me to help with the next clinic. I said I'd bring muffins if she'd bring the cones for chest compressions. Boomer asked for extra petting breaks. The deal was made. City programs rarely feel like friendship, but this one did. Because it was built from hands, not headlines. Autumn came, and the path by the river turned brass and blue. Sarah and I walked Boomer there. "Do you ever think about the exact second it all changed?" she asked me. I watched Boomer sniff a feather like it was a clue. "I think about staying," I said. That was the turn. She nodded. We turned toward our separate doors, both unlocked now, carrying the quiet feeling that comes after a storm finally gives up. The Saturday clinic kept growing. I added a small table. Small repairs, no charge. Tell me your story, too. People brought me broken lamps and memories with frayed edges. I fixed what I could and listened to the rest. Boomer moved through the room, a living comfort. On a rainy night, I opened the drawer in my room and took out the torn strip of coat I'd used to stop the bleeding. I had written 2 words on a small note and tucked it there. We stayed. Sometimes fear tried to creep back in, telling me to keep a bag ready to go. But the torn fabric quietly argued back, reminding me of the choice I made. I set down Boomer's bowl first, as always, poured coffee, and listened to the heater clunk itself into a good mood. The city outside was breathing a little easier. So was I. Staying, I realized, was my new normal. It wasn't just survival anymore. It was about purpose, community, and building a home with my own hands. I no longer looked for a way out. I finally had a reason to stay.